All right, welcome back to the second installment of Alien Slayer and I's three betting series. Uh, we're gonna just hop right into the hands. Let's do it. Okay, in this hand we have a very common situation that Alien Slayer and I would like to talk about. We're facing a button open from a solid regular with a low rundown hand, and our options are to call, three bet, or fold. Now, folding, of course, I think is out of the question. Our hand is too strong. It has too much post flop playability. So really, it comes down to three betting or calling. I think that whether you three bet or call is completely opponent dependent. So what I'm going to do is spend a minute talking about the different situations and what I consider when I'm thinking about whether to three bet or call. So players that I would like to three bet against, I do actually like three betting against these types of opponents for a couple of different reasons. One being is that it's deceptive. A lot of players, on the lower boards, say it comes like 7-4x, like to float those boards, like to attack those boards with bluff raises. And it's important against regulars who you are playing on a consistent basis to let them know that you have those kind of hands in your three betting range, so that you don't let them get away with that. Other players that I like to three bet against are players that are more fit or fold against c bets in three bet pots. Of course, players that are going to call and then fold to a lot of c bets on the drier boards and not give you much trouble. I like to three bet against those kind of players as well. Now, players that I do like to peel against more often, I think that against like stronger players, I would be more likely to peel, just because stronger players typically do play better in three bet pots, and I don't want to be the one who's creating the dead money to give up on post flop. And against those better players who I have maybe a better read on with their c betting tendencies, I'd be looking to check raise some flops. Yurik, what do you think about when you're deciding whether to three bet or call in these situations? Is your approach different than mine, or did I forget anything that that maybe I should be considering?
No, I think you're definitely mentioning a lot of important facts. Just to add one other fact is that problem with those low middle-ish rundowns is that they are not good barreling hands. So you're either flopping strong and trying to get stacks in, or you flop very marginal or air. And for those times, it sucks when you decided to three bet against a competent player that is who doesn't really give up easily on pots, and then you have the decision. Like oftentimes, you're just going to flop complete air. Let's say the board comes king 10 deuce. What are you going to do? You can fire one, but if he's peeling often enough, then maybe not even that c-bet is profitable, and you can never there are no cards that you can profitably double barrel on. So you really, that hurts the playability of your hand. And so I definitely agree on the fact that you say that you're only three betting it against guys like passive, straightforward guys, where it doesn't really matter because they fold so much to the flop c-bet, or we just have an easier time and they won't try to float or to bluff raise at some point, or attacking that much. So we have a much easier time against those. While the playability, we really have to be realistic about the playability of the hand, and that it's not that great.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, your profit has to come from somewhere, and I think that a lot of players new to PLO really overvalue these kinds of hands, and actually even worse hands than this. I see a lot of fishier players going nuts over 5-4-3 deuce single suited, and the simple fact is that for the most part, the value in this hand isn't going to come from flopping strong and getting paid and fist pump getting it in good. For the most part, it's going to come from people folding to c bets. It's going to come from having a disguised hand post flop. And again, this is a hand that would be a lot easier or more of a standard three bet in position, but I'd be more cautious about it out of position, especially against more thinking players. Now, I also think that there's a big difference between this hand and say 9-8-7-6 or 10-9-8-7. That's a common question that I get a lot. 10-9-8-7 and Jack 10-9-8 and Jack 10-9-7, both single suited and double suited, I consider to be much stronger hands than this. I don't know if you would agree with that, Yurik, but I think that that's pretty clear.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, and I mean, again, just think when in doubt, try to think one street ahead. Like I said, if I have a good read on opponents' c-betting tendencies, I think that just calling and check raising is such a good option. If you have maybe a bet sizing tail or you know if they c bet their air or if they don't c bet their air. Just like any kind of good read on their c betting tendencies is typically a good argument for defaulting to a call. But again, like I said, I think that against a lot of players, this is a good hand to three bet for disguise, if anything else.
Yeah, definitely. And like you just already mentioned, that the danger is also coming. The lower your rundown gets, the more often you're going to flop the bottom end of a straight, or even like a bottom draw to a straight. And both suck because they can easily be dominated, and we are not really sure whether we can stack off, whether we can barrel, call, or raise, or whatever. Like, we are really in no man's land
Right.
on those marginal draws or straights. And the higher our ranks are, obviously, the more likely is that we are now on the upper side and our opponent is on the low side of the straight.
Sure.
And the lower we go, the effect becomes even more dramatic. So if we have a hand here like 5-4 3 deuce, the additional downside, besides of being having lower ranks, is also for the times you do flop a straight and it's on a wheel board. So let's say the board comes ace deuce 5. It's very unlikely that your opponent's going to play back at you and trying to rep the 3-4, the hand that you have, because he knows that you have a lot of aces in your range. You're never folding a set here. Maybe you're not even folding top pair or two pairs. So you have very little implieds, and your opponent is much less prone to bluff on an ace high board, even though it has a wheeled straight on it, than let's say on a 7-4-3 board. So that also reduces a lot your implieds, and you should really stick to the middle-ish high rundown to 3-bet.
Right. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how it would be different if we were in the small blind with this hand. Is that more of like a 3-bet or fold type of situation for you, or would you ever peel with this hand? I mean, I personally would 3-bet or fold it. It's just not a great hand that plays, or not a hand that plays great out of the small blind as a call.
Yeah, definitely. Like, we want to avoid playing multi-way pots with those low rundowns for the most part, because the risk just increases a lot of having being up against at least one player who has a dominating rundown. Whilst when we're heads up, there's the probability is not that high.
Cool. So we do actually end up 3-betting in this hand and get called by the solid regular. We flop the straight on a 7-8-5 two-tone board, so pretty happy about our hand right now. I mean, I think that I would never not stack off with this hand. But it is a very wet board. The nuts it's going to change a lot on later streets. So what's your general approach to c-betting this flop? Do you normally go for a check raise, or do you think it's better to c-bet in this case?
It depends a little bit on the opponent, but if we assume that we're up against a reasonable aggressive opponent who realizes that this range whiffs our range a lot, that is mostly consisting out of high cards, we can expect him to stab here on the flop a lot when we check to him.
Yeah.
So we have actually two benefits. The first is when we check here, the first is that he's stabbing, sometimes even with air. And the other advantage is that now we can check raise and get our stack in, or close to our entire stack. And we avoid playing later streets, playing the guessing games on later street when, like you mentioned, the nuts change. So it makes it much easier for us to play. So for this reason, I would always go for a check raise here against any reasonable aggressive opponent.
Uh-huh.
And we can balance it perfectly by also putting in some big draws like Jack 10-9 rep with or without a flush draw, nut flush draw with something else to go, a set, the nut straight, like everything that strong that we want to continue with, we can just check raise it here. And obviously we're also forced to check fold, bear over pairs, bear over cards, like hands that can't really, like, since he is going to be able to call or raise very often when we c-bet here.
Yeah.
I prefer to just have a check raise and check folding range instead of a c-betting range.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, just in general, like it's exactly what you said. It's if it's possible, we would really prefer to get all the money in right now, or like if it does check through, playing it for like one street as like a check call or something like that to induce bluffs. Now, I want to actually bring up a point for a second, and we're gonna have to think actually a little bit more about preflop about what people's ranges are. When I'm playing, when the roles are reversed and I'm on the button, facing a three bet from the big blind, I think it's really important to have a good idea of what the three betting tendencies are, because some players, and I don't know if you've encountered this as well, they three bet a very, very tight range from the big. It's almost always like very strong big cards or very strong aces, just because it's so much easier for people to peel out of the big than it is for them to three bet. So I think that against better players who do have more balanced three betting ranges, these flops aren't necessarily as good to like stab with your air. But against players who do have a much more big card heavy three bet range, you can get away with it. Do you know what I'm saying, Yerk? Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely agree 100%.
Cool. As played, the flop does actually check through. Turn changes the board a little bit, bringing it back to our flush draw, but our straight is pretty much always the nuts here. And we opt to bet, which I think is fine, especially in today's games. I think that a lot of players are going to play it more passively once they do check back the flop. So, again, like we always have the best hand here. We want to charge draws, and there is a hell of a lot of draws right now on a board like this. So, let's just bet our hand for value. And of course, I do like our sizing almost close to pot, because I think that we will get peeled here a lot. So we want to charge them a big price. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Oh yeah, like pretty much like you said, it's pretty important that now we bet big. We have actually now the range strange advantage because he checked back the flop, and we can expect him with obviously any straight, but also any set and any strong combo draw that he would bet. And now it's just about not giving free cards, because even a hand as weak as a gut shot and a flush draw has close to 30% against our hand, and we really don't want to give him the right odds to draw. And at that point, we're happy of him folding, so we definitely go for the big size here.
Yeah. Would you ever go for like a double check raise here?
I see, since the turn didn't change the nuts, I think it's very unlikely that now all of a sudden he starts betting, knowing all of that his range is pretty capped and weakish. So we really need a good read against somebody who, like, more of a weaker player who doesn't really realize that about hand reading and thinks, okay, he checks twice, he can't have a hand now. I bet here and always take it down. So against those players, more basic players, we can go for it, but against regulars, I wouldn't really recommend it.
Gotcha. Cool. But he does fold, which I think is to be expected. I mean, he checked back the flop. A lot of his hands that are capable or willing to call a bet on the turn probably would have bet the flop, so I'm not too surprised to see him fold the turn.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next one. What do you think?
Yeah, perfect.
Great.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Casino Crime here. Now, if you like this video and you want more, then go ahead and click the subscribe button below right now. And if you want to join me for more of my 6 max success secrets and free video tutorials, just click the link to the right. See you inside the trainings. Good luck.